I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and pay my respects to all our elders, past and present, and emerging leaders and elders. And I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islands peoples.
Yunluwanjara means good day to you in Guga Yalanji. My name is Graham Brady. I'm with Kunjur Men's Group here in Cairns. We are a men's group that cover many issues, are dealing with men's problems, aspects of good and bad, and also the things that make up men's ability to become a better person. Today, we're in June, jumped ahead a bit there, but we're in June of 2022. It's been a last few years with the COVID and everything restricting a lot of people's activities. But we've, as Kunjur Men's Group, we've always maintained our meetings and our activities to the best of our ability. And today this podcast is going to delve into some of those activities and also the things that men in general that we'd like to explore as peoples, Aboriginal people, Highland people, Indigenous peoples. We have connections with other Indigenous peoples all around the world. But if we bring it all back, there's always the holistic view that we are all human beings and we live on this planet, and we need to look at some of the issues. I usually have guests on the our podcast program, but today I'm going to just delve into a few things myself. I just recently turned 63. I've seen a lot in my 63 years of existence, especially within the family, within the whole communities I've lived in, and wanting to be able to draw attention to some of these vital facts that affect our people, both holistically as a being part of the makeup of Australian people. These things have affected both black and white, as I observed in my years of existence. So I want to touch on some of these issues, and some of them are very relevant right up until today. They still exist within their all shapes and forms. Some of the issues, especially when I was young, back in the 60s, and even before my time, there was the issue of land rights. We've come a little bit further. There is now the issue on the table of treaty, reconciliation, unity, family, environment, and one of the most important ones that always seems to be left out is our spirituality. What gives us the reason to exist? What is the purpose in life to exist? How do we cope as human being people on this planet that contribute to the best way how we could live together? So I'd like to jump right in to one of the issues. It was back in the 60s that my family, especially my father, Don Brady, and my mum, Aileen Brady, were very involved in. It was the land rights issues. Land rights was a very important issue that was put way back in the 30s. We had the involvement of the Gurindji people, and in 74 of Gough Whitlam putting into the hands of old man Lingiari as a gesture of this country of Gurindji originally belonged to you. Those things have recently sort of been lost in time, or sort of been put aside, mainly to the fact is that everyday living tends to just have us focused on what's in front of us. But land rights. What is land rights? Well, we could put it plainly. It is the knowing that you belong. It comes back to a sense of belonging, a sense of ownership, and a sense of responsibility. Land rights, back as I saw it, back in the late 60s, going into the 70s, because there will be some images that will be brought up within this podcast where I was actively involved from a young age. In Brisbane, 1967, referendum came about. Aboriginal people were moving off the reserves and the missions. Torres Strait Island people were moving off the islands into the big cities. The biggest city for Queensland people was Brisbane. We have our satellite cities such as Cairns and Townsville, and they started to become populated. So we have this mass influx of people coming off these holding yards, as I probably would put it, because in the sense, that's what they were. They were designed to split our people up, to take our language away, to take our ceremony away, and to take our responsibility for care of country away. So land rights have always been a forefront issue, and it is just right up until today. We see it now in forms of the 1967 referendum, where we became citizens of Australia. It brings a new narrative into our consciousness, and it is treaty. Let's have a look at that one too. What is treaty? What would it entail? At this point in time, in the middle of 2022, in June, there is going to be a new calling for the treaty to be reactivated, the issue of the treaty, and who would want to be part of the new panel to look at the treaty. They are sending out emails of interest to certain people, both black and white. Some of you might have received some of these emails to start regenerating the issue of treaty. So let's have a look at what treaty is. And as my eyes have seen these things, especially back when I was young and I was very aware of what was going on in my younger years. Treaty never came up into the discussion. Treaty, probably, that I would put it, entails this, is that first there has to be a war between two peoples, nations, or countries where a treaty is to exist. Yes, there has been what has been classified now or bandied around as frontier wars. But there's a problem in that one, is that war is initiated by having troops, by having regiments, by having boundaries articulated within which area you are fighting for. Aboriginal way. When somebody come into your country, we go back now ancestor time, somebody were to come into your country, this is how it was always documented by these explorers, ones that were going out finding new pasture lands, is that they were always greeted with kindness. We hear this in all the archival documentation, that when they came across Aboriginal people, your explorers of that time, they was greeted with a fair sense of respect. Gugayimajir, as I can talk a little bit about that as an example, is that the fires that Cook saw, that in his journal, he said he saw a lot of smoke, campfires, he said. What they were, Gugayimajir people were letting him know that yes, we see you. Light a fire, let you know, yeah, this is where we are. So there was no hiding the fact that there were people here. And Cook knew that. But also, the fires and the smoke was letting him know that, yeah, we see you. Gugayimajir people said that they were down to the beach. And they greeted him, probably in this way. Yes, who are you? What you doing here? And what kind of people are you? Where are you from? That's usually what all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people say when they greet one another or having to first meet somebody. They would say, yeah, what's your name? Where are you from? And I could expect that was the same thing that our Gugayimajir people done to Cook. So there was no sense of us going to war with him. Let's take that as example one. What really set off a confrontation was when Cook did not share the turtles with them. While the Gugayimajir and Gugayalanji was there at the time as well, showed him which is the best wood to fix his boat. And they showed them that in good respects. One of the old people, ancestors at the time, wanted to do an exchange and wanted one of, I think it was Banks's dog, his greyhound dog, and said, I'll give you this, you have something here, but let me keep that dog. But nah, that wasn't on. So even that is recorded. So you have this understanding and this thing here that's sort of being played out. We did not confront them with aggression. We confronted them as any human being would confront another human being by saying, who are you? Where are you from? What you doing here? Soon found out that their boat was crippled. Helped them. But the confrontation started like this, is that when Cook and his men would not share the sea turtles that they have hunted, now, this is where we come to land rights and responsibilities. They knew, this is the Aboriginal people of that time, ancestor time, knew that you don't take a lot. You only take enough for yourself. Or if you do hunt a lot, you share it out. hang on, this was not occurring. He did not want to share the sea turtles that he has gathered for his voyage back. So a confrontation occurred, not an all-out war has been instigated. Bear in mind, treaty constitutes war. There has to be war. There has now been brought to attention of a lot of our people that there were frontier wars. Okay, let's have a look at that. People come into your house, ancestor time, come into our country, and they start beating your family. They start hitting your women and old people, because sometimes the men were out doing their hunting business. Women were the main ones, and old people were still left in the camps. They come across this campsite and the hostile acts, because we know of the massacres that has happened. I don't know if it was through naivety on their part on how to deal with us, but as they was moving through the country and colonizing, all these massacre sites started to be registered, and there exists a massacre site map. Hang on, we did not go to war with them. They was doing a hostile act towards us. Where in the Constitution argument is treaty is the way of confronting these past wrongs. For myself, and our disclaimer says this, is that you don't have to agree with what's been said in this podcast, but please take this into consideration. Treaties have been broken. Ask the Sioux people of the American nation, First Nation people. Ask the Maori. Their treaties have never ever gone to plan. Why are we asking for a treaty when we know the past history of broken treaties, broken promises? That brings also reconciliation to the fore. Reconciling between two peoples, confrontation existed. We got to come to a middle ground to make sense and to make happen a more better way how to live together. Reconciliation is now part of the issues that are being brought forward. So we went from land rights to treaty, and now we are within the realms of reconciliation. We just finished having the Reconciliation Month. Reconciliation is bound up in confrontation. Treaty is bound up in confrontation. Land rights is bound up in confrontation. Where did the confrontation first start? We know this. It did not start with us. So how do we come together and give an honest opinion on how we are to reconcile and to come to an agreement? Treaties have been broken. Land rights has never been given. They give us a flimsy paper called native title that only give you visitation rights and tokenistic consideration that, yes, you were once the owners of this country. I will also add that Aboriginal people, we did not consider ourselves owners. We considered ourselves as custodians. The owner was the Creator. He was the one that gave us this land. He was the one that gave us this law. He was the one that told us, and through our songs and our stories and our ceremonies, how to behave as human beings within the lands that he had given us. So not once did our people say we were owners. We were custodians. The true ownership belonged to him. And many of our people have started to regather the names of that creative spirit, and it's each to everybody. That's your respect, and nothing wrong with that, because at least you are giving recognition to who really created this country. So we are not owners, we are custodians. We live and we die, and the custodialship ends up being passed on down through the generations. So right down through the generations of Cook, many of the explorers, it's come down to our day. 2022, here we are. Treaty, land rights, reconciliation, these are the things that we are left with. The same things that have not been resolved for 200 plus years. How are we going to resolve these things? First, in my opinion, we need to have unity, and I need to go back to the 60s. There was a worldwide unity that happened by black and white people. There was an awakening that the planet is fragile. Black and white people were voicing their understanding. Wars are not the answer. Even today, wars are in outbreak all around the world. So, when we look at the 60s, there was an awakening. It is very ironic that that awakening also started triggering the response of the radical Aboriginal people. Radical, yeah, sounds a little bit so sort of forceful, being a bit out there too much. But all radical means is that there's a non-conformity. Why do we have to conform? Why did we have to conform to the missions, to the our reserves, to the fringe dwelling, to the taking away of occupancy of your country? So the non-conformity started to exist here among Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. There was a organisation that sprung up within the 60s. It actually started just before the referendum. It was called the Brisbane Tribal Council. That's when the idea came along. Now, the Brisbane Tribal Council were looking at the formation of an organisation that would use the proper protocols on how our ancestors would deal with problems. Men in council, women in council. Thus, the Brisbane Tribal Council. There was no services that existed back then in the mid-60s, early 60s. No medical service, no housing service, legal service, and others that I could add to the list. They were non-existent. So, the Brisbane Tribal Council started to organise themselves, and the first cab off the rank was our health. The health service was one of the first services that was put into operation. Where the Brisbane Tribal Council was not just operating within their own community, within the Queensland district. We were talking to people in Sydney, in Melbourne, Canberra, Adelaide, Western Australia. The Brisbane Tribal Council quickly became, in 1 year, the National Tribal Council. And what it done is that we all collectively started to join our collective thoughts and ideas together on how we're going to tackle one of the main problems. And the first of those problems was health, Indigenous health. Paul Coe was instrumental, along with Chicka Dixon in Sydney, to form the first Aboriginal medical service. There's a bit of history there. Look it up. In Melbourne, we had Gary Foley and Bruce McGuinness. In Brisbane, we had Don Brady, Dennis Walker, Don Davison, Steve Mam. These leaders were also talking to other leaders around the country. Old man Jack Davies over in Western Australia, and formed the National Tribal Council. What came out of this movement? Grassroots, the operations on how our Indigenous people operate within a council structure. We were able, and bear in mind, these services were never a gift from the governments. They were hard fought on the streets. The 60s into the 70s held a big time of radicalism. Yes, we had the Conservatives, and I will show you photos later of us dancing in 1967 at old Uncle Neville Bonner's his polling booth in Ipswich, outside of Brisbane, and we corroborated there to support him. So whether we were labelled radical, there was still a support for the Conservatives, and the Conservative aspect is what brought about the 1967 referendum through the Progress Committee of the 30s, and this is what they were saying. We need to be able to work with you, which means that we have to become a citizen of this country. And they were very successful, the Progress Committee of the 1930s. Old Lady Bamblett, she was one of the main organisers that pushed for the yes vote, for us to become citizens. So now we're getting a picture of what the 60s were like. We had this whole world awakening, make love, not war. They were sick of war back then. It wasn't any type of mechanism to bring unity to the world. Divided the world, it still does. Divides the world today. Into the 70s, we had the marches, the demonstrations, the sit-ins. But he's the main one that we could say the driver in this. It was unity. Bearing in mind, mobile phones did not exist. It's sort of like not everybody had a phone in their house in the late 60s and the early 70s. There was only certain people that had a phone. So the way the leaders of each state would communicate is to make sure that they had enough coins to be able to drop into the payphone to ring down south, to ring over Western Australia, to ring down to South Australia. And you only have a limited amount of coins. So the payphones were utilised, and some had private phones, and it was the bare minimal. You could actually say it was non-existent for Aboriginal people to even have a phone in their house. But this is what unity does. This is the driver. Look what we have achieved. It is now regarded as band-aid solutions just to have a medical service, a legal service, housing service, and all the rest that are connected to it. It never solved the problem and never will solve the problem of our rights to country and rights to exist. We are still fighting that problem now today. So, within all this activity, unity existed among Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people. We talked to one another. We all formulated ideas together. And we could see the results of all that is because now they are mainstreamed into all nooks and crannies of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island existence. You can go to DV Connect. You could go to helplines. You could go to your legal service, your medical service. We have the rolling out of Closing the Gap. But I need to draw your attention to where all this began. And the only way this could have come to a success is because we were unified. With a lot of money that has been thrown out, the plights of Aboriginal Island people into housing, into a lot of other problems, community-based problems, a lot of money. So money was not the driver. Back then, there was no money. Yet, this is what's been achieved. Today, a lot of money has been thrown out there. Many communities are given this. Many organizations are given X amount of dollars, all striving and all going after, cutthroat, cutting one another out at the existing pool of money that the government will consider to give to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island cause. But too many people are biting for that piece of pie. We still are only left with crumbs. We know that is because a lot of these services and departments, they come and they go. Fly in, fly out of a community. What's happening there? Throw a lot of money at it. The problem remains. It is not money. It has never been money. It has been proven. It is unity that is going to help fix this problem. And the unity has to start within our own backyards. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people, we've got to start talking to one another again to start understanding that we are not factional. We should not be just worrying about our own little corner of the world, or when is our next lot of funding? I can't do the program because I got no funding. Please, if we come together as a unified body, which we were, ancestor time, languages, dialects, travelling man, songlines, ceremony time. These is what brought people together. This is what news and information spread out. We can see in the way how language operates. They talk Gogo Yalanji up here, and that same language, it exists right down. Mala, Mara, Binna, Binang, Pinna. That's how we operated. Why aren't we seeing all this again? Why aren't we revisiting the true essence of how we ourselves can fix these problems? Land rights, reconciliation, treaty, family. We come back to family because that's what we were, the original makeup of our ancestors is that we were families and we operated in family groups. The family became extended family. We have family laws. We have Bunji law, in-law, a law for in-laws. So we have all this in operation. Yes, we could say, yeah, I still follow that old way of interaction between our family. Yeah, I know my mob. But hang on now, this is something that's sort of a little bit disturbing. We know that a lot of our families have been broken up. People are still finding their families. People are still trying to reconnect with their country. Yes, that is only human being instincts. This is what the Creator put into us. That's why He made the earth for us. So we got to reconnect back to our land. Would treaty reconnect us back? Would reconciliation connect us back? Would native title connect us back? What are we really looking for? What are we really looking at? I say we've got to rethink in a unified understanding where we all start coming back together, because that was how we operated. We operated in a unified sense, a unified setting. We respected other people's country. Well and good, we see on the ABC where they hold up where they're reporting from. Darumbaland, Kabi country. Good respects, yeah, fine. But tokenism we don't need. We don't need tokenism. We need real people that will be able to stand up and unify the country again. Wars have never been fought in this country. Aboriginal and not so much, I won't talk for Torres Strait Island people, but I know Aboriginal people. We did not go and annihilate another family. That is an act of war. We did not go and traverse hundreds of miles to go and take over another person's country. That did not exist. We did not go with the intent of claiming something that was not ours. Does treaty look like a solution now? You have to have an act of war. Okay, so we're saying now that, but it's not between our people. Remember, war never existed in this country. We never even went to war with the invaders of this country. It was subtly taken over. And here's a bit of insight. The breastplates, the king plates that they gave our old people, for mine, my family, ngana, Jibrayangogoyalanji, Western people, Maitan Wara, Wulbujabur, in the Maitan district. My great-grandfather, Nyuluburi Minkaji, white fella named Sandy. He was given a breastplate and he was called Sandy, King of Maytown. We know of many other breastplates that were handed around. This was the intent of putting a breastplate on our ancestor. No war. We did not go to war with them. Okay. But they needed an act of war to claim for king and country back then. And the act of war is that if you were to decorate somebody, we call him Bapunji, the one who gets up and talks for your family, We put a breastplate around it. He is now the king. He is the authority that I am going to take over. Bear in mind, no act of war was committed, but the subtleties of the conditions of war was committed. By simply putting a breastplate on them, they now had control of the king of that particular area. Does that breastplate still exist today in the form of a treaty? Does that breastplate still remain in form of reconciliation? These are the things we've got to start asking ourselves. We know that native title, in its short life of existence, has actually caused our people to fight against one another. Native title, I'm the one who is from this country, and I won't gloss any of this over, but I hear a lot of our people saying, "You're welcome to my country," No, this was a shared country. And when they're saying, "You can't come onto my country without permission," fair enough. That existed also. But it's only when you went there with foul intent that you were not welcomed. Bear in mind this, food for thought here. The areas that our people roamed about, walked about in, was barely a radius of about 200 miles. A bit more with the western people, the central people, because theirs is more vast. But us along the coast, we would only traverse so many miles, and we would stay within that boundary. So, in a sense, there was an understanding, that's them family there. But when I sing out, I'm coming in here, we don't know if anybody's listening. What that singing out was, it wasn't only just to let family or one that were within earshot that we are coming into your country. This was the main purpose for singing out. We'd sing out to the Creator, and we would say, "We're only coming in to see our family. Give us safe passage. Nothing hurt us along the way. When we go hunt, we would sing out to our Creator and say, we only want couple kangaroo. We only want couple turtle. We want to just feed our family." Why do we do that? It's because we know He was the one that gave it to us. So when we start standing up as Aboriginal people and saying, "This is my country," take a step back there a bit. Have a good think. It's not your country. You are custodians. Treat it with respect and treat others with respect. I talk abrupt like this here because it's the only way to get the point across. Diplomatically, yes, we can go down the diplomatic road if you'd like to, not to offend anybody. No, I don't want to be offensive. But let us strip everything back to its bare bones and see it for what it really is. Land rights was the first call of Aboriginal people, Torres Strait people, and I'll get to them very soon because old man Mabo, he played a crucial thing to play out into how this all came about. But with Aboriginal people, go back to how we originally thought, because that makeup of our thought process, the way we interact, has never left us. We are still like this. That's why we are still connected to country. I come now to how native title came about. We have to go back to the Queensland Act. The Queensland Act came out of the Rum and Opium Act of the time. opium was put in there because Chinamen wanted to come over here for gold too. They brought over with their stimulants. So did the Europeans. They brought their stimulants in the form of grog, all culminated together in that one word, rum. So it could be spirits, wine, beer, but they would just classify it as rum. The opium came into effect because a lot of the convicts started to like being stoned. Chinaman brought that one over. Thus, the Rum and Opium Act. Why they done that is to make sure that the colonies did not have a mob of drunk, stoned people. They had to limit them. They had to restrict them. They had to make sure that there was a law put in place that they are not going to be inebriated and just lay about like idle people. So that law was enacted among the colonizers. That law then started to make its way into how they can keep us under subjection. In brief, thus became the Aboriginal and eventually the Torres Strait Island Queensland Act. Food for thought. Apartheid was modelled on the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island Act. Old Man Mabo, the one that kept the United Nations passed a declaration in 1975 outruling that slavery and all the things that go with it, the oppressiveness of empires oppressing a country had to be put down or put out of order. That was the declaration, Human Rights Declaration of 1975. The Queensland Act had to go at that same time, but it existed right up until the late 70s. The last person to keep that one in effect going was Joe Bjelke-Petersen. He was the last premier to fight tooth and nail for the right to keep the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island Act in existence. This is what happened. They put a king plate around our people. The way of putting our ones into subjection by saying that now I am putting the king of this country, of this area, into subjection. No war was initiated, but there is laws within war, and the breastplates are one of them. To get us into subjection, also, England needed specific boundaries, specific ways of saying, that's theirs and this is mine. We never operated like that. Our boundaries only existed because of what the Creator has put into our minds, that you are custodian for this part of the country, you are custodian for this part of the country. Never ownership. White fella wanted to legalize boundaries and to make, because boundaries were really non-existent. They were only there to mark, this is the start of one country, the end of one country, and the beginning of another country of responsibility. Because we did not have clear gates, fences, walls, white fella back then could not sort of really put the last parts of their plan together to really say that now we have conquered this people, because the rules of that did not apply, because there was no walls, no gates, no fences. But this Torres Strait Island people live different, because they live on an island, and their boundaries are stark because they're surrounded by water, and they had only small lots of land. So of course they are going to have a fight to protect what is theirs. Australia is a big country. We did not have to do that. But yes, in the Torres Strait Islands, and this is where old man Mabo got them. They said that because you do not have boundaries and fences and walls and things to say that you own this country, we're going to take it over. But old man Mabo said, nah, step back a bit. I'll show you boundary. I'll show you markers to say, this is my part of the country. That's theirs, this is mine. Bearing in mind, on the mainland, it is only natural things such as mountains and rivers that distinguish one section of the country to the other. But on island, they have clear human-made markers. And that is why he was able to say, no, I can show you that, yes, we do operate in a way where we have clear boundary markers. The Act came into effect. Joh Bjelke-Petersen wanted to keep the Act, maintain it for as long as his political existence. In the 60s, New Guinea got their independence. Some of the Torres Strait Islands wanted to be a part of that independence. Joh Bjelke-Petersen said, no, I'm going to keep you in Australian waters. And he squashed that one. Where the cry for independence to be coupled with New Guinea did not come about, because Joh Bjelke-Petersen was successful in keeping the Torres Strait Islands within Australian waters. This is what happened. He actually gave us a clear footing by keeping the Torres Strait Islands within Australian waters. Old man Mabo went to the High Court and said, no, I can show you markers. It did not apply on the mainland, but up there on the Torres Strait Island, there were clear human man-made markers to show boundaries and to show different parts of the area and the names. So it satisfied the courts. It gave us a victory in this sense, that yes, you do have ownership. No, there was not terra nullius. We weren't flora and fauna. We were human beings that had rights to live within our boundaries. Old man Mabo settled it once and for all in the eyes of European. But what do they give us? Native title. Native title is a flimsy piece of paper. It holds no weight. It does not give us what happened to old man Lingiari, where Gough Whitlam poured the earth back into his hand and acknowledged, this is your country. You are not. This is not terra nullius, as first thought. So, food for thought. The notion of terra nullius existed right up until Mabo made the claim that yes, we were human beings living on this earth that was given to us by spirit. They got their understanding on the creative spirits given them that country, so have we. And that is a victory in a sense. But like anything that ruling powers will try and give up, they won't give up without a fight. So that's why they presented us with native title, not worth the paper it's written on. It only entitles us to visitation, acknowledgement that yes, it once was yours, and no, you can't sell it because it's not an asset. We are bestowing an asset on you. You cannot sell that land. It's there for the enjoyment, they say. Pretty it up. Nice and nice, lovely words they like to feed the people, tickle the ears a bit. To the enjoyment of all people. Yeah, fair enough. But it does not give you the actual fact to give you back our custodianship. Give us the authority to stop mines from digging around. Gives us the authority to say, no, give us the house that we live in and the land that it's built on. If we're going to call for treaty, if we're going to call for native title, here's a 21st century, how would I put it, a suggestion. The houses and the land that our people are living in, give it back to us. Let us own that land. Let us own that house. That is the asset that should be rightly given back to us. Not a piece of paper that is worthless, not a treaty that has been broken, not a reconciliation plan that only gives us an acknowledgement of, yeah, I'm sorry. The Creator gave us this country to live on. It was always His plan that we remain on this country. His purpose is to give Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people the enjoyment and the right to life, to live on their country that I've given to them. If we are going to tie all this together and make sense of it, the suggestion is that I am going to put forward to you. We have a homeless situation, rents are sky high, food, bills, petrol, everything is sky high. Do one thing. To the powers that be, where Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people are living, the house and the land that they are living on, give it back to them. It is our right to life. Bringing it all around back into the environment now, where we include all of humanity. Custodialship is who we are. We have the right to maintain what the Creator has given to us. We have the right to say, even though you give us 1/4 block of acre of land with a house on, we will look after that. And we've also got responsibility for the creek that run through this suburb. We also have responsibility for the animals and the birds that fly over this country and are still existing within the country. We have responsibilities. But to give us a base that we can actually call our own, that's when you give us back the responsibility of caring for the environment. The environment is a big social issue that all the world is looking at. War does not hold its part in caring for the environment. And yet that's what you are called to do. You are called to go to war, some of our people, for the sake of this country that does not even give you the house or the land that you live on. Bear in mind these facts. Look them up. They are out there. I don't encourage you to go searching and formulate a big operation around these truths. But keep in mind the subtlety of what real truth because that is now the new word that is bandied around, truth-telling. We have all these different words that pop up through our existence. 63 years I've been alive, and I've seen a lot of things come and go. So I have a right to talk like this. I was in the thick of things, and some of the photos that we will incorporate in this podcast will show you with me in it as part of what has happened right throughout the years that I've observed. I've observed all these things. There are ones that have passed away, yet there are ones that are still living today that seen the same thing and was in the same unified concept that we were back then. We got things not because of money, it's because we were unified. Housing service, legal service, medical service, and the rest were all given, all gotten by us being unified. Whether it be marching in unity out in the streets, whether it be in the conference rooms, whether it was of rallying together to confront the governments of the day. That's what we got. But bear in mind, these are just band-aid solutions. The true object of land rights, and it's nothing that cannot be achieved. Suggestive thought that we can all in unity, I'll put it that way, all think about and come to a unified conclusion. Just give us the house and the land that we are currently living today. Let that be an asset to our family. Let that become an asset to future families that will take over that asset. Let them have the rights to sell it or to use it as mortgage to buy other assets. That's only a small thing that I could come up with. But where the governments and the talking points of the day are still around treaty, reconciliation, environment, family breakdowns, community breakdowns, and it's taking our minds away individually from the true concept of unity. If we can all start thinking as one together again, maybe we'll be able to get what is something that is substantial to the existence of our people. My name's Graham Brady. That's my opinion. I hope you like this podcast. Bye.